in shell shock or something, but we took a little time off. But I'm joined here today with Chuck Nisbett and Mackenzie Kerr, who's back after the election. We're glad to have her back, but then we're kind of not glad to have her back because if she wasn't coming back, that means she would be going to Victoria. So
yeah, yes. Exactly. Or staying in Prince George and doing everything on Zoom like Shirley is now.
Yes. Yeah, she had a scrum with regional or provincial media yesterday. I sat in on, so it's rather interesting. And that leads us to our first topic. Shirley, of course, has been named the interim leader of the provincial Liberals. And she made it quite clear yesterday when she was talking to the media that this is not a full-time gig for her. Or it is a full-time, but it's not a long-time gig. But she's made it clear that when they get a new leader, she's not interested in the leader's job. So let's go to Mackenzie. You campaigned against Shirley. What are your thoughts on Shirley being the interim leader?
Sure. I mean, first of all, congratulations. It's very exciting for her. And we sat down and had coffee a week after the election and talked about everything going on. And we had a really constructive conversation, and communication is open between the two of us so that if anything comes up that I'm passionate about, or that, you know, the people that voted for myself want brought forward, then she said, you know, feel free to message me and I can learn about the things that you're talking about and bring them forward. And so I think that that's definitely the direction that we need to be taking. And, you know, a lot of people are really, really happy that she's the leader of the opposition party. And I think that's great. But she was quite high up in the party already. So, you know, I don't think that there's much of a change right now, you know, based on how much of a voice we have in the legislature, because we already had a really strong voice with her, you know, being the MLA for 19 years. So it's exciting, but I don't think that it's going to change much, you know, if that makes sense. So I think that it's exciting, and she was very clear that she's not interested in being the leader. And I know that with the interim leader of the Green Party of Canada, Joanne Roberts, because you take the interim leader position, it means you're not allowed to run for a position to be the leader. So I think that that's the same provincially, and that's why she took it, because there's no way that she's running for the leader. So that's why they give it to someone that isn't interested in being the leader. I'm not sure if the rules are the same, but that's the pattern I've seen in other party politics. So yeah, and she also said yesterday on the Chamber of Commerce kind of political thing that she was doing that I attended at noon, that she won't be endorsing any candidates for the leadership race either, so that she can stay unbiased, and just hold the other parties to account, she says. And, you know, they have 28 MLAs, and it's a significant drop from last time. And it's going to be interesting to see where the BC Liberal Party goes. Right now, I think she's just kind of maintaining and trying to keep things together while they start up a new session. And I don't know if she'll be doing much direction setting. I think that it will be more of a new leader position. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the party, because they lost so many seats and people are kind of looking at them as a party that's, you know, falling apart just because of so many seats that they lost. So it's going to be interesting to see how they rebuild.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Shirley will certainly be a steady hand on the tiller, as they say, for these kind of things. You know, she's been in politics for just about 20 years, and as far as I know, hasn't been touched by any scandal or anything. Is well respected on both sides of the legislature. So, yeah, I think she'll do a good job and is probably the right person for the job. Chuck, what are your thoughts on Shirley being the leader?
Well, I know that she very definitely does not want to be leader, but she is most definitely the most credible person for the position right now. And I think that they finally did do something right, and they brought her forward and said, yes, help us, we need to rebuild. And I think that's perfect thing for her. She knows the party inside out. She knows the province inside out. She's had a lot of experience running this province, and a lot of experience within the party itself. So, you know, they had the talent they needed there to bring forward and root around and find who's going to be the next one to step up as leader. And they're using it. And that's the best thing that the Liberals could possibly do right now. And more power to Shirley. I hope she does her usual wonderful job rebuilding and finding the people that work well with her and will work well for the party. And then I hope she can just step back and relax and let it all go. I think that's the way it needs to go.
Yeah, Mackenzie, you talked a little bit about how the party has to rebuild a bit. One of the things that in the media scrum that Shirley was asked about, and she acknowledged that there's work to do there, is fixing the rural urban divide, not only in the province but more specifically in the party. Primarily because the last two elections, the Liberals really haven't had any inroads and lost ground in the Metro Vancouver Lower Mainland areas. And that's where they need to win some seats. They kind of have the rural areas locked up. Do you think that her being from Northern BC, that obviously helps?
Yeah, I think it can. I mean, I think that there's definitely work to do on the rural urban divide, and all of us are working on that, all of us are cognizant of that are in politics, trying to make it not so divisive for the most part. I mean, the good ones are trying to do that. But I definitely think that having her from the north brings a northern voice to, the legislature as the leader of the party. I think as the interim leader of the party, I think that it's great. She already had a very strong voice, though. So it's not, she was already very high up in the Liberal Party because she had been there for so long. So I don't think that there's much of a change. It's not like her voice wasn't being heard before, and now we have this rural voice that is all of a sudden being heard. It was already there. So I think that she'll continue to do that, and that's great. And the rural urban divide issue is a big one. I don't know if they're going to be able to pick up any Fraser Valley seats, in the future. I think that they need to do a lot of rebuilding and a lot of work in the next 4 years if they plan on picking up more seats in more urban areas. It's definitely far stretching, but we'll see. I mean, we have the same problem with the Green Party, but the opposite, right? We have a lot of seats we have the 2 seats on the island that are more urban areas, and then it's difficult to pick up seats in rural areas. So we're kind of doing the opposite thing right now, trying to get more seats in the areas that we don't typically have seats. So I think in that aspect, we could learn something from each other. But
yeah, is it Squamish, Whistler? I'm not sure what the riding there was. Yeah, almost have a seat there.
Sea to Sky, yeah.
Sea to Sky, is
almost
it?
Got it.
30, yeah. Yeah, so
it was pretty disappointing to see him lose, but it was so close. And just seeing how close he was is extremely helpful. And for next time, and he would have been an amazing MLA. He was a great candidate. And Sonia visited Whistler and Squamish a couple times because she knew that the likelihood was high and the party was trying to support him as much as possible. And he was very, very close. And if we had a different voting system, he would have won. He got more votes than, some BC Liberal candidates did and NDP candidates did in other ridings. He got way more votes than them. But because of the voting system that we have, it's unfortunate.
It didn't work out. Yeah, that's a shame. Our voting system, I think a lot of voting systems need to go through some major changes. That just made me flash to the US presidential electoral college thing. And that's kind of the way that things happen here too, and there needs to be some revisions made, I think. It just doesn't seem to be really representative of what people want in a lot of cases. If you have more people voting for somebody, then that person should go forward. I mean, I don't see how in the way it works in the States, you can win an area and still lose electoral seat to that. It's I don't know.
Well,
there's lots of I'm sure there's lots of big brains out there trying to figure out the best way to make elections work, and
yeah,
I just wish them luck.
yeah. I've been an advocate of proportional representation in various different forms. Some I like, some I don't, for a long time. And I think it takes political will more than anything else. There are ways it can do it. Yeah, we shake our head at the American system, electoral college, and yet up here we don't specifically vote for a premier or a prime minister.
No.
We vote for the party, and then or we vote for the candidate of the party. And ours is kind of convoluted too. And we've had situations in the past, as everybody knows, where you don't necessarily win the popular vote, but you win the election. And I guess it all comes down to, we want to change where, it's fine that majority rules, but majority also has to take care of or listen to people in the minority. And I think that's part of our changing system. So Mackenzie, what's your preference on voting system? Put you on the spot here for.
Any form of pro-rep, anything but what we have right now, honestly. Yeah. I'm still learning about all the different kinds, but I think that, the referendum that we had, what was it, 2 years ago or something, was on purpose set up very confusing, so that it wouldn't pass, so that this could happen when the NDP, call a snap election. And I think it's all very planned out. So, yeah, I don't have a specific type right now that comes to the top of my head, but I'm still learning a lot more about different types of proportional representation. But there's lots of examples from around the world, and, even smaller areas in Canada, like municipalities and such, that have different voting systems to try them out, and it's working well. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think maybe.
Go ahead, Chuck.
I think we need to just mix it up a little bit. Take a look at some of these smaller municipalities and things, yeah. And see their systems and get an idea. Maybe look at what that would look like on a provincial or national scale. Nationally. In a lot of ways, I feel like BC is unnecessary when it comes to politics nationally, in a lot of ways. By the time everything's done here, the race is over. So, I think things need to be worked out a little bit differently nationally as well as provincially. And we need to see what will work better. It's a hard situation with such a large country, I'm from England, and it's so different because you have double the number of people in a 20th of the size,
Yeah.
And all the European countries are kind of the same. They're very small. Everything's very immediate when it happens in them. But in Canada, it moves slow, and it goes across in that 3-hour drag, or as far as it can go, 4.5 hours altogether. And it's a different challenge to overcome when you're doing elections and things.
Yeah,
it's got to be a better way.
No, sorry, that's my doorbell. So, if you guys excuse me for a sec, and I'll leave it to you guys. And
okay.
No, not a problem.
Talk amongst yourselves, as they say.
That's funny. This is when you definitely need to have pants on. So when you have to get up and leave your Zoom screen and walk away.
Well, that's exactly it. I was just kind of watching, going, okay, so he's going to get up. Does he have boxes on?
Yeah, I think there's so many things that need to change in our system. And I mean, the Green Party's been proposing a lot of those changes. I think you're frozen, Chuck. Oh, there you go. Yeah, changing the voting age to 16 is also something I'm really passionate about, and I think that could help a lot with, getting people inspired to vote and that kind of stuff. So there's just a huge problem with getting people out to vote, even with this.
Yeah, well, that is a major problem. Is getting people out and getting interested in it maybe moving to 16 as a voting age is an idea, because it would maybe give those kids the chance to talk about it while they're still in school as it's approaching, right? And they gets interest in the whole process up. So that might be a very good idea, And then not only are they get to talk about it as it comes up, then they can analyze it afterwards as well.
Yeah, a lot of people say, oh, kids that are 16, how can they know about politics? But they're the ones in class getting taught about it right to their face, and they're forced to sit through it. Whereas some people that are 35 years old won't ever look into any of the education about the political platforms and just have an uninformed vote or not vote at all, or, so I think that there's huge benefits to it, but a lot of changes need to come, and I think they're coming, but it's kind of a chicken and the egg with getting the voting system changed, because the people that are currently in power don't want the system changed because it will affect their successes, right? And you will have more minority governments. You'll have more people that aren't, for example, a full NDP majority, or, the federal Liberals. So you'll have more voices at the table, and it will affect the people that are currently in power. So they're not going to be the ones to advocate for a different voting system. So either you have to fight against the system to get enough people elected from parties that aren't the majority, which is very, very hard, and what we've been trying to do the whole time, or I don't know what, that's what we're trying to figure out, is how do we change it? Chicken or the egg, how do you make it happen first? So
where does it go next? That's the big part.
And actually, one of the systems that I liked a long time ago was the one that BC came up with originally, the BC STV. A lot of people didn't like it because the counting of the ballots could be complicated, and it certainly was. But when I was working at the newspaper at the time, I was in Williams Lake, and I held a ballot. I printed ballots in the paper for people to print out, or to cut out and mark their ballots and put their name on them so there wasn't duplicates, and bring them in. And I can't remember, we got probably about 700 people responded. And I tabulated all the responses the way that they would be tabulated under STV. And this, I did this during an election campaign, actually. So I had candidates, like real candidates, who were actually running, and put that in. And lo and behold, the results in the Kerr would have elected the same two people that first past the post would have elected. But in a different manner, and I liked STV because your ballot wasn't, your ballot count was always counted. Like if your guy passed, or your guy got elected, the first choice, or your guy didn't, move down. Anyways, it was a little complicated, but it really worked in that people's ballots actually counted, and I don't know. That's just,
I think even the leadership race for the Conservatives federally, I think, was ranked ballot, was it not? So it's very funny that they do that internally, but then they won't advocate for it in our country, and so they think it's good enough to pick their leader, but not good enough to pick our MPs across the country. So
exactly,
that is different. That they would do it that way, and not have the faith behind that system.
Yeah. Well, it used to be like with the big conventions, both the Liberals and the Conservatives, and I think probably the NDP, that was always one of the interesting things about the ballot, is everybody would vote, they would tally the votes, and if there wasn't a clear winner, the lost one dropped off, and everyone would vote again, right? So, which is another way. It's long and convoluted, because I think there was one that went to something like 10 or 12 rounds of voting, so it takes all night. But it comes down to, everybody, there's a true majority of people vote for the person who wins. So.
And I think our need for speed and our lack of patience is a huge signifier of everything that's going on right now in our society and culture, right? We're so used to just getting immediate responses or results. And when we had to wait for the presidential election or wait for the provincial election, we had to wait 13 days for the final results. And, some of the seats changed. Candidates were waiting and waiting and waiting. And so you say, you know, it takes a long time, but it's worth it. And that's what we need to be putting back into our society, because we're so used to just having instant results that if we have a system like that where it would take time, because you would drop off the last person and vote again, people would be, and of course that's not exactly how it would work. If it was federally, you wouldn't make people go back to the polls 10 times, but you know what I mean? We just need to encourage people to be patient and have a better understanding of how the system works, because if they understand it, then they'll say, oh, I understand why I have to wait now. Because if they don't, then they just get frustrated and discouraged with politics. And that's what we have right now, of a lot of people that don't follow politics. And I mean, it's not very exciting to follow, because you look at question period and you see the heckling that's going on, and that doesn't inspire you to want to get involved in politics. And that's something that I bring up often. You know, we need to be showing people that if you want to follow politics, it's something that you can be interested in, and that we are treating each other with respect and dignity, and not just yelling across the aisle. And that's what they are showing it is right now. So I think that that also needs to be changed, you know, parliamentary reform, so that we don't have that kind of behavior in our elected officials.
Yeah, the system right now is set up to, it's winner take all. And so it's like, it ends up being very antagonistic and confrontational rather than collaborative. You know, and that's, and that just gets us to where we are now, you know, and it gets taken to the extreme down the states. You know, if you know, if I'm a Republican and I come up with the cure for cancer and the Democrats in power, well, that's it. Too bad everybody dies, because they're just not going to not going to listen to me, you know, and that's just wrong. You know, it's the whole, you know, if people have good ideas, everybody should be listened to.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I think Mackenzie had it very true that it's the speed. Everybody wants speed now, right? That is very much the way. Everything needs to be quick and easily disseminated and decided. You know, everything just, let's get it over with, let's get it out there. And we maybe need to step back a little bit on something like this and go, look, there's another process that will work probably better for us. Let's try and do that. It's going to take a little more time, but if we do it, we might just all be a little bit more satisfied with the result in the end.
Absolutely.
But somehow we have to convince everybody of the same thing.
Yeah, right on. Well, let's switch topics a little bit to the main topic, and from a news perspective, you know, at the end of the year, we always labored over what's going to be the story of the year. Well, this year is easy; it's COVID. So I don't think there's pretty much too many other stories of the year. So what do you think of all the restrictions coming down and where we're heading into? Yesterday, I think it was 941 new infections in BC, which is absolutely astounding. What's got to happen, Mackenzie, before we get out of this?
Yeah, and I'll just pull my little psychic glass ball out and tell you what's going to happen here. I mean, I think
smarten up. That's what they got to do.
Yeah, we need to be extremely careful right now. I mean, you know, we need to move forward with compassion and make sure that we're having conversations that are conducive to making sure everyone is safe, because there's quite a lot of people that are not for, you know, wearing masks everywhere, and we need to be talking to those people. And, you know, if it's safe for us to do so, if we have a friend that we know that doesn't want to wear a mask, we need to be having a conversation with that person, because, you know, they may be putting lots of other people at risk, and this is a greater good kind of scenario. And a lot of people, you know, I think that a huge problem right now is not getting pay if people stay home sick. And it's encouraging people to keep working even if they have a little cough or a little cold, because if they tell their employer that they're sick, they have to go home with no pay for 2 weeks. And I think that that is a huge problem right now, because a lot of people are struggling, and it's coming up to Christmas time. And I think that, you know, a universal basic income could fix that right now. And that would be a great solution to a CERB replacement, to get everyone on the same playing field, so that we don't have that happening, because that's happening, whether we like to admit it or not, whether I have a specific example or not. You know, when I was working at the restaurant before I left, before the campaign, we were talking about it, and people were saying, you know, if I get sick, I can't afford to go home if I just have a cold, like, so I think that is a huge problem right now. And we need to be looking at all of these avenues, and there's so many things that we need to be focusing on. Seniors that are home alone. I am so grateful that I live with my Nana, because I moved in January and then COVID hit a couple months later. And if I wasn't here, it would be very difficult for people to come and visit her. And I think that we need to be checking on our seniors, reminding people to phone and do, Zoom hangouts with their friends. And instead of going out right now, encourage people to go back digitally, kind of how we were in the spring. I saw that the Northern Lights Winery, they lit up all of their orchard for people to walk through, and they just announced today that they're not going to be doing that right now just because of COVID. And the Tim Hortons in College Heights got a case and they shut everything down for 2 weeks, and it's here. People are saying, oh, there's only a couple cases, there's only 10 cases a day in Northern Health, we don't even know if they're in Prince George. It's here. So we need to be extremely careful and cautious and wear our masks. And there's a lot of people selling masks now, the cloth masks, and they can be super fashionable. So it's not something that you have to, worry about if you don't want to wear one that doesn't go with your outfit. You can find one in every color. So I think that we need to be encouraging people to just make it a normal part of their routine and be very careful of where they're going and stay home right now.
Yeah, I still wear my expression. What was that, Chuck? Go ahead.
I tend to the basic black.
Yeah, it goes with everything.
I wear my Exploration Place one, and people get a kick out of it. They seem to, I like that one because it's got Mr. PG on it. And
there you go.
That's pretty good. But Mackenzie, I can appreciate what you're saying about workplace. And I, just when you mentioned that, I sort of thought back of some of the workplaces I've been in, some of the employers I've had over the years, and some were good, some were not so good. And I remember having some employers where, if you entertain the notion of, well, I'm sick, I want to take a couple of days off, man, that was tantamount to, yeah, well, take a couple of days off and don't come back. And that's how they were, and hopefully workplaces have improved since then. But I worked for some people that really didn't hold employees in very high regard. And it's got to be very tough when now, if you're sick, for one thing, a lot of times, previously you'd work through it, go to the office or wherever and cough all over everybody. So, and now at least we're having the good sense to stay at home. But yeah, it's a real concern when it affects your employment for doing nothing wrong other than getting sick, which everybody does from time to time. So. Yeah.
And you have to go home for the full 14 days, like if you have a cold and it gets better after 5 days, I don't think that they'll let you back after, I think that you are gone for 14. So, that makes a huge impact on people's paychecks right now when they are struggling, and a lot of people were laid off for many months this year, and now they're just, have been back for a couple months. They're trying to catch up.
I think some places you can go back to work with once you have a negative COVID.
Oh, right. Yeah. Right. Okay. If you get it. Yeah.
You get a negative COVID test, you can return. But it's got to be tough. And like the financial impact on people is huge,
And if you don't have a family doctor, you have to call the hotline and wait days to get a test. Whereas if you have a family doctor, you can get a test much faster. So this just looks at our disparities in our system of, who gets that access quicker. Well, people with more money and privilege that have family doctors.
Yeah, well, that's it. If you've moved to town in the last couple of years, good luck, because you don't have a family doctor, and it's going to be very tough. It's just, and people are so stretched already this year. It's just going to be really, really tough on everybody trying to find a way to do this without hurting. And unfortunately, that's the thing. It's going to hurt to everybody. To do the right thing, to do that, okay, I've got a bug of some sort, I don't know what it is, I've got to stay home. It's going to hurt. You've got to accept the fact that it's going to be painful, and it's not going to be what you want to do, and you're just going to have to go for it. That said, how many people are going to do that? it's going to be really tough. You know, I see a lot of good people in Prince George, and I think, wow, you know, maybe we'll get 50, 60% of the people will do that, but the other 40%, that's a large number still. You know, that's a lot of chances out there.
Yeah.
And COVID is growing here faster and faster than it has at any other time in this pandemic. I know you guys know my wife works up at the hospital, and she sees a lot of these people, and she sees there's a lot more cases up there in town now, and restrictions are tighter and tighter everywhere. So it's here. Don't be thinking it's not. It most definitely is here, and it is impacting people here. People here in town are dying. So let's just be aware of that and make the right decision when that cough hits you. You know, make sure you can get a test, or if you can't get a test, stay home until you can.
Yeah. And it's funny because, yeah, Mackenzie, you're exactly right. I think a lot of people up here are saying for a long time, oh, Northern BC, we got, you know, in June there, I think we went something like a month and a half, and basically no new cases.
Yeah.
We're good, we're okay. You know, and now all of a sudden, you know, we're getting a lot of cases, and it's getting to the point now where pretty soon everyone will know someone who had COVID. You know, I know a guy who had it what, a month and a half ago, and he's okay now, thank goodness. But you know, and he's got diabetes, so it was a real concern because he had pre-existing health condition that, and he's in his late 60s. So you know, he's got all the boxes ticked against him, but he managed to pull through, which is good. So, but we're getting there. It's going to be pretty soon that pretty much everybody will know someone who got infected.
Yeah, I know a couple people that have been, and you know, they've recovered now, but yeah. There was also an outbreak at the Kitimat LNG plant yesterday. I think I saw in the news, 41 cases, and they shut the whole thing down. And Site C, still cases all the time. And I think that we need to be putting people over profit right now, and trying to keep all of these giant people camps open is not, just because we want to push these projects through, is not the right decision right now. So I mean, all problems with Site C aside, it's dangerous to be putting that many people on a site right now.
Can't agree more.
Well, following along on that, what about places of worship? There's some concern there too. I know there's a petition going around asking for people to sign to get the provincial authorities to open up churches and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on churches?
I just think
in terms of COVID, not just in general.
Well, let's go. I've been thinking on this a long time. No, I just think that anywhere where we're having more people gathering than the well, what is it now? 6 or is it 10? 10 for large groups, I guess. You just can't go beyond that. I mean, it worked earlier to keep to these limits, right? Mm-hmm. When we were keeping everything as locked down as possible in the early days of the pandemic, BC managed to keep things pretty quiet. As soon as we started to open things up, we knew the second wave was coming. It hit when everything was in full force, and bang, we've got hit really hard again. I think we need to go back to that initial lock it all down, keep it all locked down, and just ride it out that way. It's not as much fun. There's not so much to do, but you know what? More people get through it. So let's just do it that way until we've got a reliable vaccine that everyone's getting access to. I think that's what we really have to do. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's a pandemic. You've just got to fight it the best way you can, and I think that's the best way.
Yeah, I do understand. Oh, can I
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I do understand why, why people that are signing this petition are frustrated, and I want to not attack them. And I think that it's important that we have cordial, respectful conversations with people that are very passionate about this. And, I did see the article in the newspaper from the person that started this. I think he started it, but I think that we need to be, listening to these opinions and then sharing our point of view, and the health officer obviously makes the call. But I do understand why the frustration is there when bars and restaurants can be open and then places of worship can't. But if you look at the details of why, that is why, right? I mean, they're encouraging people of only in the same household to go for dinner. The chairs are distanced. They have smaller capacity now. I think they're half capacity, 2/3, something like that, and everyone is very safe. And I think that it's very tough because we do have a limit on how many people can be sitting in an area like that. So if it's 10, how do you choose which 10 people get to go to the church, So I think that what we need to do is be talking to those people about solutions of, okay, well, which seniors that go to your church don't have access to an iPad, and then figuring out how we can get them a virtual, Sunday service, and thinking creatively and out of the box so that these people can still, worship and still feel like they're part of this community and they're not isolated, because I do understand how impactful it can be when people are isolated. And maybe for a senior, going to church on Sunday was their only outing. So I think that it's incredibly important that we don't just push the whole group of people to the side that are signing this petition and writing them off as, COVID deniers and all of that kind of stuff, that we're talking to them with compassion and saying, okay, I understand your problem and I understand why you're upset. Let's find a solution that works to make everyone safe. So that may be virtual Sunday services. How can we help you with that? And just talking about solutions, because I think if we are just at each other's throats, it's just going to make this divisive, system worse, because that's what we're dealing with right now. People across with different point of views on every topic under the sun. And, that's what we jump to really quickly. So I think that we need to slow down and look at what the root cause of their anger is in the first place. Is it because they want the community aspect? Is it because they want, the right to their freedom of religion? Well, that's fine. We're not stopping you from that, but you have to do it in a different place now. You have to do it virtually or do it, in these different out of the box ways, I think, instead of just a lot of people I see are, attacking in the comments of just throwing these people under the bus and just dragging them through the mud as soon as they post something about wanting to go to church on Sunday. And I think that that's not the avenue that we need to take. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same sort of argument with schools. I know Dr. Bonnie Henry mentioned that. That's probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now, when she was asked about, well, why schools are not being shut down or not being forced people not being forced to wear masks at schools. And her comment then was that with all their tracing in that, they're finding that schools are not a place of necessarily transmission, or it's not a problem area. There's exposures at schools and that kind of thing. But they're finding that places like church, for whatever reason, is where these are spreader events where schools.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. It's so strange that schools aren't, but churches have been. But you can prove it, right? And that's why they're doing this, because they can say it's coming from these places and it's not coming from these places. That's why we're making this decision. Yeah,
and you're right. It's tough because people don't want to accept that, and I don't know how we get past that sometimes, when people simply do not want to accept things, and I always hear that, you question everything, and I agree, as being a journalist, question everything, but then you also have to accept facts when you get them. You can question them, but when you find out what the truth is, then you have to adjust your thinking, as far as I'm concerned. But
that's the thing. I mean, you have to be ready to adjust your thinking as well, right? You have to be open to that idea as well. And I think a lot of people still aren't open to the idea that the results are showing them, and I think more people need to just accept the science, right? Yeah, when it's showing you in your face, this is where we need to quiet things down, and this is where we can be a little more relaxed. you have to go with it. And it's not happening enough yet, but I think it will. I mean, we're a pretty reasonable bunch. We'll all come together eventually.
I do want to point out Andrew Curiata from CBC tweeted a thread the other day. I don't remember which day it is, but I retweeted it too, and I don't post much, so you can easily find it on mine. If you try and find it on his, it'll be buried in a bunch of other articles. But he was talking about transparency and how lack of transparency at the government level can lead to conspiracy theorists. And it was a very, very interesting thread, and I think it was very accurate. And I don't think that him sharing that will fuel the fire. I think it is very important for us to write things like that and to say it's incredibly important that we have transparency in the government with everything that's happening, because he was trying to find out how many ICU beds we had at the university hospital here. And it was nearly impossible for him to find because no one wanted to tell him that information. It wasn't public. It was very difficult. And I think that we need to be understanding, with people that are questioning this, because, question everything, yes, but then we need to say, I agree that we need more transparency, because that will find a common ground. And if you can agree with them on something, whether that be the only thing that you agree with them on, that will bring their defensive mechanism down a little bit, and then you're able to have a bit of a conversation. And that's something that I talk about often, because just talking with people on the opposite side of the aisle, so often it becomes very defensive. And so I have to find something in common. And if that is the only thing, that is very important, because I also believe that we need more transparency in everything that's happening. And, I do understand like why we don't say some things, like where the cases exactly were in Northern Health at the beginning, because that can lead to a lot of racism if it's coming from First Nations communities. We saw that one from McLeod Lake, and, they said that there was a guy in Prince George and he was running around and he had COVID, and they mentioned that he was from McLeod Lake. Well, the comment section was just insanely racist. So I think that there also is an importance to keeping things like that under wraps until we know, but there's also an importance to transparency, especially when it comes to hospital beds, and just making sure that that public information is there for people so that they can get all the information, so that they can make an informed decision and believe the information. Because if they're only getting little pieces of it and they want a big picture and it's not being given, I understand how that can lead them down a rabbit hole of, well, I couldn't find that one thing, or that one thing that they said, they changed their mind, so all of it must be fake, and people are so quick to jump on that. So I think that we need to be talking about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I saw part of that thread from Andrew as well, and I agreed with it wholeheartedly. And as a journalist, I can say that getting information out of Northern Health has been a challenge long before COVID. It always was that way. It's been, sometimes you kind of joke, well, you can ask them what day it is, and you don't get a straight answer. It's and it goes to transparency, and there are some organizations that are good at sharing information, and others that are just not so good. And I have to say that Northern Health is one of the ones that's not so good at sharing things. So yeah, that can certainly help. And I agree with you, Mackenzie. We don't need the name and address of everybody that has COVID, so we can go put a scarlet letter on their door.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid. But if there's cases in Burns Lake, well, people in Burns Lake need to know that there are cases in town. It's as simple as that. We don't need to know who, we don't need to know where they are, but we should know that they are there. And transparency is certainly a big one.
Transparency is a huge topic, I think. I really think it means so much. I come in contact with people all the time during the day at work, and I can't tell you how many conspiracy theories I have had passed on. And some of them are amazing.
Same. Yeah, they are.
And I'm just like, wow, all that. Dude, COVID does so much. It's incredible. But there's people need to have an idea, just so that they can get behind it and not feel like they're being herded with no sense of where they're going, and just give somebody a little bit of an idea of what's going on, and maybe they can come around to an idea where they can help out a bit. You never know. It just, we got to stop some of these conspiracy theories. They are nuts, man.
Yeah, and they've been around for a long time, and I think that's part of the things with social media is that they come out into the fore now, and there's a platform for them. I know I've seen a lot of them over the years, and they used to come across my desk, and they were usually written in all caps. They're handwritten in all caps. You know that's when you get one of those letters, it's usually pretty exciting. But,
yeah, can frame it.
But people like to believe these kind of things. I often joke about my mother is that, she would, her doctor, she had diabetes, and her doctor would tell her, like cut back on the sugar and, do all that stuff. And she would kind of shake her head, but she would pick up National Enquirer and read one of those little ads in the back that said cayenne is a cure-all for everything, and she would believe that wholeheartedly. Believe her doctor telling her. It's just we want to believe.
Isn't cayenne the cure-all for everything?
Yeah, cayenne. Yeah, well, it was according to my mother.
It is.
It is. Well, yeah, it is good for you. There's no doubt. Yeah. So. Yeah, it's strange. People want to believe stuff that just isn't true. I don't know. What do they call it now? Cognitive dissonance or something like that? It's the name.
Yeah. If there is a thread that you can pull from anything, someone will pull it and run with it. Yeah. And that's what happens over and over again. And COVID has provided many threads to pull, and a lot of people are taking them every which way and coming up with some incredible ideas, and it should all be put in a book sometime. It'd be really interesting. It'd be a great read. It really would.
Yeah.
Well, it goes down to thinking down the States, when Donald Trump got in, it's all drain the swamp thing about, deep state and this sort of notion that there's these shadowy figures behind everything. And I'm not saying there aren't shadowy figures behind things, but I don't think it's quite as widespread or is quite as organized as a lot of people seem to think there are,
Yeah.
I've in my life, I run into a lot of politicians, and a lot of people think they had something up their sleeve, and half the time they just didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
And they
look suspicious because they're down the wrong hallway, and you jump to conclusions, and no, they just don't know where they're going.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't think there's quite as secret of a society out there ruling the world. As with some of the. You got the QAnoners who think it's child pedophile rings and stuff like that are trying to run the world. And it's just, it's absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. But how do you stop that? How do you get out of that?
Information.
Information, yeah.
It's the good and the bad information. You give information, and people take it and bend it and change it and create bad information from the good information. So as you're giving out information and opening the doors, people will still adapt it and change it and come up with different ways again. But the only true way is information, the truth, right? Mm-hmm. So if you give the truth and put it out there enough, a lot of people will pick that up. Some will bend it and twist it, but it's still best that the truth is out there. That's kind of what drew me into journalism in the beginning. The idea of putting the truth out there and showing people what really happened. Mm-hmm. And as a photojournalist, that was my whole thing for 35 years of shooting. Just, this is the way. This is what happened. See it. You decide from there.
Yeah. And that's
with the cell phone. Oh, go ahead, Bill.
No, and that's part of the problem I think that we have now is the media in general has been so weakened, at least in this country. We have far fewer journalists who are trying to get that information, get it out there, and then we have a lot of other organizations that thanks to the internet, they can make themselves look pretty, like legitimate news organizations, and they're really not. The PR firms and Fox News is the prime example, but there's a lot of other ones out there that are worse than Fox News, and people tend to believe that this is actual real news, and
that's the big problem. You can't tell who's a journalist and who's not, right? You can't tell who's got integrity and who doesn't, and who has a different agenda than just spreading the truth, right? Probably 99% of all the news information groups online are not journalists, right? They are corporations, businesses, individuals that have a specific agenda over and above just disseminating the news. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty easy for people to get caught up in their in these different ideas behind the news that they're getting, and not getting real information. It's kind of amazing that more people haven't strayed from what's really happening, given that they're getting fed so much information from so many different sources all the time. Mm-hmm. It's getting harder and harder every day to find what's real online. And I think that's something that really needs to be addressed. 35 years ago, the internet was a very small little thing with a bunch of people with little, bulletin boards back and forth, that kind of stuff. It was nothing. But it's become the major information and communication thread for people's lives now. And there needs to be, and I'm going to get hate for this, there needs to be regulation of some sort.
Well, I think it's easy. There's an easy solution to this. It's just that we don't have the political will, and Facebook and Twitter and all those people are way too big for it to happen. But the solution is that social media platforms should be subject to libel laws.
Yeah.
That will end everything right.
Just like newspapers were.
Yeah, just like newspapers were. Like, I used to tell people, I get a letter to the editor and it's, way over the top, and I tell the author, I can't publish this. And they would say, I told them I can't publish it, I get sued. And they'd say, doesn't matter, publish it anyways. I don't care, I'll go to court, I don't care. And I have to tell them, they don't take you to court, they take me to court because I published it. And that's the difference. On social media, the person or the group, the entity that actually publishes it, which is what they're doing because they provide the platform. Same as the newspaper, is the letter to the editor is a platform. And yet they are not held liable for what they disseminate. And I think that's all that needs to change. You give the ability, a lot of these corporations and and people that have the ability to sue Facebook for stuff that shows up on there about them, then there's going to be Facebook will start clamping down. Right now, there's no incentive for Facebook or Twitter or anybody to actually police any of this stuff.
Not at all, because it gives them more views.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's it. Yeah. Right. That's what it's all about, right? Is if you outrage enough people, they're going to come and take a look and find out what's going on, right? Mm-hmm. And
I do want to circle back just to the, how do you fix this was your original question. And I think it's very difficult, but I think that the very important thing that we need to do is, like I was saying before, with people that are, hesitant to wear masks, or people that are really wanting to go to church on Sunday, is find something that, brings compassion into the conversation. So maybe it is about the QAnon and the child pedophile rings. Well, you can say, I'm also against this. Here is the sources that I look at to teach me about child pedophile rings and how I can help with child trafficking and sex trafficking. This is the information that I've done. You know, let's look at this information together and give them the information. And they might not believe it, but at least then you're kind of finding something that, well, I agree that that is also bad. I just think that it's happening over here. And you can, you know, it's tough because not a lot of people have the time or the capacity to spend trying to educate someone else, you know, especially if it is someone that's been affected by something like that. For example, Black people teaching white people about BLM. Well, you know, the capacity is not there, you know, for that education to happen and be only on the burden or like on the backs of, you know, Black people in the movement. So I think that that is also something that needs to happen right now, is if you have the time and capacity and patience and compassion to have a conversation in a calm way where you can regulate your emotions with someone that has these views, then that's what we need to be doing, because I don't think that we're going to just, you know, put the information in front of them and then because they see it, they're going to believe it. I don't think that that's going to happen. They're going to say it's fake anyways. So we need to find a different way of, you know, showing them, I also believe that that thing is bad. Here is where I look up my information. Here's the sources I use, and that kind of, you know, tactic. But that takes time and effort and capacity and energy. It's a lot of emotional energy to go through things like that. It can be very draining to have a conversation with a conspiracy theorist that just won't give you the time of day to even listen to what you're saying at all. So, you know, it's really tough. I don't know if, you know, what kind of regulations would work for social media. I think they'll just find another platform that they can do it on anyways. You know, I think it's really, really tough, and we need some very smart people thinking about it and talking about what the solution is going forward, because it's very difficult.
Yes. And on that note, we've come up to just about an hour. We sort of started blabbering on here and went on pretty long, which was excellent. I think we had a great conversation, but we've come to the end of our time, and I'd like to thank Mackenzie Kerr and Chuck Nisbett and everyone who tuned in and watched in. We didn't have any questions today, but we had a few people watching, so thank you very much. And we'll be back next week. Todd Corrigal from the Chamber will be back next week. He's doing his own thing today with Mike Morris today, so hopefully you tune in to us and not them, because we had a great conversation.
Yeah, and tomorrow the Chamber is doing another one of those things that Todd is doing with the Chamber of Commerce, and it's the mayor tomorrow to talk about what happened in 2020 and what's going to happen in 2021.
Yeah, excellent. So thanks everyone, and we'll be back next week.
Thanks, Bill.